Alright, so hey guys, it's Jason from The Art of Ass Kicking, and we're here with part 3 of my interview with Ryan Ferrier, founder of 60 Day MBA. In the last part of the interview, we were talking about sort of the kinds of things that block people from starting their own business, fear of failure, feeling like they don't have enough money, and sort of that identity crisis that they have, and we talked about some of those things. In this final part, I'd like to talk about some of those initial strategies for testing the waters, for getting a feel for what you can do as an entrepreneur, as to kind of get started, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start at the very beginning, right? If somebody has got this idea, right, or maybe they're already potentially offering services.
Let's say this person's a crafter. They like
Cool.
to make some things, but they're not sure sort of where that goes.
Awesome, I love it. And so what we walk our entrepreneurs through is something that we call the ask advice technique. So this is a way of taking the pressure down, reminding yourself that, hey, this is just a test, but the only way I'm going to find out if I've got a business on my hand is by trying something in the real world, right? And so what we do is we actually have them call up 3 to 5 people that they think would be a good fit for whatever craft it is they want to make. We don't have them make a craft. No, do not make the craft. You hear me? Don't make the craft yet, right? Because here's the deal. This is a little bit of an aside, but I don't care if you're like Twitter or you're Greasy Spoon Kitchen. At the end of the day, the person who decides whether you have a business or not is your customer. At the end of the day, at some point, you've got to sell your products or services for more than it costs you to create your products or services. So really, your customer is the one who's going to kind of vote on whether you have a business.
They're the decision maker.
Yes. And so we want to start there. You want to start with your customer. But take the pressure down. We have them call up 3 to 5 people, right? And ask them if they could do some research, which is legitimate because they are doing research for a business that they're thinking about starting.
Right.
I mean, who says no to that request? It's especially if it's somebody you know, right? And you can even let them know, I thought you'd be the perfect person to give me advice on this because I know you've always told me how much you like my crafts.
Right, and they feel good, and they want to help you, and...
Yes, and then before that meeting happens, we have people go through and begin to describe this person. Who is this person? How old are they? Who do they hang out with? What kind of car do they drive? Where do they live? And begin to think of this person as a whole person, not just as somebody who might buy my products.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, what you really want to do is locate some sort of frustration or problem or a want or an aspiration that this person has that you can connect your service or product. So if you're making a craft, what is it that you can create that will kind of scratch that itch? We then have them have these meetings. We have them ask 4 simple questions that we walk them through. Things like, what's your biggest frustration when it comes to, or as it pertains to, your current interaction with, and then you just insert whatever your product or service. If it's crafts, it's like the crafts that you're consuming now, which ones do you like the best? What is it that you like about them? And then what could be better about those? And you do that, right? Yeah. And then you go, and then the sequence of questions, I won't go through all of them now, but just goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and getting into what does this person want out of this experience with whatever craft. Or
you have to kind of become like an amateur psychologist.
Yeah, you're kind of a detective, right? And in the beginning stages, you've got to feel your way to exactly what your product and your niche is going to be. As your company grows, you're going to package it, and you're going to do something that's repeatable over and over and over again. But in the beginning days, you gotta really play detective, and you actually never want to stop listening to your customer. You always, great companies like Apple, all they care about is how can we design this so it's as intuitive and beautiful and as nice as possible. So you keep that, but your tactics change. But in the beginning, so you do this, you ask these questions, we actually have a template people fill out. They fill out the template of these answers, and then we have them do something that I think is really powerful. We have them write down people's top fears and frustrations, people's top want and aspirations on one side of a piece of paper. And then on the other side, we have them just list their possible products and services, right? And what this does is you begin to start to see people's problems and what people want alongside with whatever it is that you're thinking about offering, or that you're currently offering if you're already in business.
Right.
And then now it becomes, how do I bridge that gap?
Right, because you think, you start off and it's like, oh, what's wrong with your key holder? Like, do you need new key holders or new cups or whatever?
Exactly.
But then it starts to become like, well, I don't want the same IKEA stuff that everybody else has. Or like, I want to sort of make the house feel more inviting and more warm, and a lot of this stuff feels very cold and sterile, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Changing.
Yeah, like what you're talking about is what we call problems behind the problems, right? So would just keep the craft example going, right? Like right now that the craft goods that they're consuming, maybe they don't have a certain element that they really like to see, right? Maybe to the touch, they're not as nice as they would like them to be.
Yeah, feels good.
Right? And so that's the problem, right? But there's something about that touch that elicits like a feeling or an experience, right? It doesn't remind me, right? Maybe this is the voice of your potential customer. Right. It really doesn't remind me of that first blanket I had that was like really worn in, and it gives me this sense of comfort and home.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you start realizing, that, oh, they want like soft crafts, but really what they want is that feeling of comfort and home, right? And so then you can start to think of your business as like, oh, I'm the person that brings that feeling of comfort and home to your doorstep, right? Whatever it is. And as you get at those problems behind the problems, then you're really like onto something.
Yeah.
But at any rate, just starting with the problems is a great place to start. And then after the call, we have people do some really specific stuff. So we have them find one item during the call that they can be sure to follow up with.
Yeah.
So they have a reason to have a second interaction with this person. We also have people ask this person for referrals, other people that they could interview about this, right? And so this gives you an excuse to follow up. Like if somebody says like, hey, like I really love crafts, I haven't been able to find any that are soft to the touch. You're currently not creating any crafts at this point, right? You can go online, you find one that is really soft to the touch.
Yeah.
You send them an email saying like, hey, I've purchased this before, I really like this, you might like this.
Yeah.
And then you're now in this person's memory bank as someone who's like, listened to their problems, came up with a solution, you weren't even selling your service, you were just following up with them. And then they refer you to other folks, and then you do the same, and then and then patterns emerge. Yeah. And as patterns emerge, that's when you're ready to kind of go forward and
I like that.
Yeah.
It's very sort of slow rolling, but it's things that are natural, right? Like phone conversations with people that you know, and sort of friends of friends, right? That seems very simple.
Yeah, we try to keep it it's simple, but it's not easy, right? Like making that first email.
It can be a little scary. Yeah.
And sometimes in class, we'll stop class and have people email during class, right? So they don't get out of class without having email.
That's right. That's good. So what do you do? Okay, so let's say we do a bunch of these calls with this crafter, and she's trying to get a feel for like these soft crafts that are really sort of feel worn in and very like homey. Like now what, right? What's next?
Yeah, so we like to actually bring people through a process that we call the 3T process. And all it is you talk to your customer, which we just did, right? And really, more than talk, you're listening, right? Like in the early days, listen, and really forever.
A little bit of talk, mostly listen.
Exactly. So, but you talk to your customer, and then you begin to translate whatever it is that you heard, whatever problems, fears, frustrations, right? That lack of home. You start to translate that into both a marketing message that you can see if it connects with people, and the beginnings of your offering, right? And then the final T is we have people try it out. We have people actually ask people if they want to buy this thing. And this craft is a great example, right? Because it's fairly time consumptive to make, but this person wants a feeling of comfort and home, wants soft to the touch craft. You can then go back to this person and your first group of folks, and you can make them an offer. You don't have to have created any of the crafts, and the offer is something like, hey, I'm going to make my first run. You guys can get in on the early, in the early days here. I will make each and every one of these first 5 custom. Yeah. So you give me your design, and then you give them a little bit of an offer where you explain how your not the fabric, that your
So
craft
it would
is
be
made
like
of.
900 mil.
Yeah, it doesn't.
yarn.
You know, you don't need thread count. You don't need size. You don't need anything like that, right? You need whatever result it is that this is going to get for these people, right? Like crafts that remind you of mom, right? And then 3 kind of benefit statements on how is this craft going to make my life better, right? And then you list 3 benefits, things like craft so soft that you'll forget that they're brand new, or whatever it is. But you come up with 3 benefit statements that really talk to the benefits that this thing gives your customer, not to all of the little features that are so important to you. And this is
interesting because you think you're going into this and like we're gonna make stuff, but what you've been talking about so far is really around sort of marketing and positioning, right?
Yeah. Well, and because here's the thing, you don't want to, you talk to people, they want crafts that remind them of home, and then you go and you make a bunch of crafts that remind them of home, and you say, hey, do you want to buy this? And they're like, oh, I don't really.
That doesn't really remind me of home. I don't know.
Yeah, and you might not have gotten it right. So you want to get this first marketing and sales message out there, see how they respond, and then you can try it out, right? And part of trying it out is trying out the offer. But then if they say yes, now it's time, we make the first run of 5. And we tell them, hey, your early customers, your feedback is valuable to me. You're just paying costs for these,
right?
And if you don't like it, I need you to be brutally honest. That's the partnership.
Right.
And now these people have gone from clients who buy or customers who buy stuff from you to partners as you build your business.
Got it.
So the fulfillment actually comes after you know if there's a market for it.
Because you basically run, maybe the first version of this headline and these benefits don't really resonate. They're like, maybe that's not for me. And then you haven't lost anything, or you haven't really lost cost. You don't have to throw away any blankets or anything.
Exactly.
You can just kind of go back and try.
You try it again, and you say like new email, and we like to keep things really low tech. So things, if you need to scale your business and get high tech, like we're obviously the people to help you with that, right? Like we're like Silicon Valley guys, we know all this stuff. But at first, test it over email. Like send them an email with kind of a promise, a few bullet points of what they get, and then an are you interested?
Yeah.
Right.
So as we kind of wrap this interview up, I want to get a sense of, like we talked about how this can be kind of simple but not easy, right? It's certainly going to be a lot of work. It's going to be, a challenge. There's going to be a lot of things that are scary. You're going to have to learn a lot of new things, right? But I mean, from your perspective, and obviously we're biased since we are entrepreneurs, but like, what do you think about when you talk to somebody who's sort of on the cusp, who's like really thinking about making the leap? What do you tell them?
Well, the first thing I tell them is that is yes, you can be an entrepreneur, right? And really, what you need is a system, and you need some accountability along the way, right? And that's what we try to offer with 60 Day MBA, because the truth of the matter is, like most of these unsuspecting entrepreneurs that we work with, we first tell them you can be a successful entrepreneur. Their first reaction is kind of like, really?
Yeah, they're skeptical.
But every entrepreneur goes through that phase where they feel like, oh, this idea is stupid, I'm going to get rejected, I don't have the money. And what separates the successful entrepreneurs from the people who don't make it are that they keep going. And 2 key components to continuing going is having a step-by-step plan that you can follow, and then having accountability for people to keep like cheerleading you along the way and saying like, hey, no worries, I've been there, here's what you do at this phase.
And that's what it's like. That's why so many companies start with co-founders, right? It's usually not one person by themselves, especially with these tech companies, because
absolutely
it's hard.
Yeah.
But sort of having the support when you are by yourself, really changes things.
I think you nailed it, right? Like even this business, I started with a co-founder. He's more on the back end, and he's worried about like, how do we scale our technical infrastructure? How do we scale our business infrastructure? I do what I'm really best at, which is teaching, training, working with people, getting the most out of people. But a lot of our entrepreneurs are starting businesses that are small enough where it's just them, right? And those are the entrepreneurs we're supporting. And so we want to give them like almost a co-founder feel with this course, right? Like we want to co-found their business with them and give them that kind of support. But yeah, it's like I couldn't do a business without that kind of support.
Love it. Brian, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, man.